So being that this is Stacie's first film, how did you come on board? What drew you to the project?
It was the most unlikely way to come on board that you can imagine, which is to say we didn't know each other and we knew no one in common. Mm-hmm. And this was her first script, and my body of work in no way suggested this character. And she, I think, and she just lobbed an offer my way, and which is also rare in my experience. And an agent of mine championed the script, loved it, and so it came with his blessing, with his recommendation, mm-hmm. Which certainly I respect him a lot, and so I read it with great interest, and I thought it was a really interesting script. I mean, the fact that she has humor laced throughout, and that the scenes were so sort of spare and smart. There was a clear vision there, and I also felt like there was a lot of room to develop a character underneath the language. It was like not overly prescribed, mm-hmm. and there were certain scenes that were actually sort of more penciled in, where I knew we'd have room to play, mm-hmm. and then there were others that were very elaborated. And the script had a certain openness in it. I hadn't decided yet how it wanted to end exactly, and so I thought, oh well, this is a work in progress for her. But she was ready to start shooting it mm-hmm. in a few months. But she was willing to leave it as it was and discover it in the process.
And that's always
with that
great
ending, which I loved.
Actor.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
which is great because it made it was almost a guarantee that it would be a collaborative effort.
So I think Robin read the script and loved it and was signing on to it, and then she reached out to some of her people because she really felt like I think she wanted some support around her, and I think she wanted some actors that she respected. And, mm-hmm. So she passed the script on to me, and I read it, and I thought it was a really, really just smart and interesting and confident script for a first-time writer-director.
Mm-hmm. So working on Abby, when you're first reading this role, and she's so complex, what parts of her were you, and what parts of her did you have to form that weren't you?
Oh gosh, I think the most difficult thing for me was to find a kind of a coolness, a disaffected, a disenchanted tone for that first part of the film. She begins in a place that's very shut down, and that, oddly, of all the challenges of the film, that was the most unfamiliar territory to me.
I just thought on the page, the way she read, she was sort of, I was just very drawn in. You know, there are a lot of ellipses in
the text.
In the text, you know, a lot of sort of like gaps where you're like, why did she say that? What's going on there? Like that little moment where like they're starting to get into it, and she's like looking at the tiles on the wall, and you're like, what's happening there?
And then she's like, pull my hair, and you're like, what is going on?
Right. And it's like that alone, when you read something like that and you're like, I don't know what that is, but I know it's interesting. There's some alternation between events in her mind and her psyche that was exciting to me. Mm-hmm. But I mostly feel like, I think where I ended up with her and why I was really drawn to her is because she's kind of a free spirit, like she lets her mind go where it's going to go, and she's not particularly filtered about it, and she's not self-conscious about it either. Mm-hmm. I think she has an agreement with her husband. I think she lives in this very conventional little world, mm-hmm. Within a conventional seeming marriage, but I think you scratch the surface of that, and she's a very unconventional person.
So, I'm curious, you've talked about you did a lot of physical preparation for the part, because not only are you having to be, vulnerable, you have all of these sex scenes and being physical vulnerable. So tell me about how you, prepared for the film, not only by hitting the gym, but psychologically as well.
Well, it's I can't actually separate those two, oddly, because
I don't think Abby does either.
Well, what I discovered was the sort of baseline for the character was this hunger that was so pushed down that it didn't even know that it was hunger any longer. And that was exactly what the physical regimen that I was on created in me physiologically. Mm-hmm. So because it was stripped of sugar and carbohydrates, and it was a kind of maybe 1,400 calorie a day, but mostly lean protein and vegetables, sort of a diet where I was working out twice a day with that. So it was a sort of, you could say, punishing, but at a certain point, you're chemically altered by that as well.
Yeah.
It oddly sort of neuters you. It's like you're just, the world becomes very sort of flat and sterile. And in fact, your body's quite hungry, but you don't know it any longer because the stimulants aren't there to remind you. The sugar is really the thing that triggers the hunger response. So
and that's sort of metaphorical.
So if sugar was gone, and so that strangely became the avenue into her, something that was triggered psychologically and chemically by this diet. It not only had a physical effect, it had an emotional effect.
I saw her as we started shooting. I was like, Robin, where have you gone? She's just so skinny.
I mean, and there's a scene where she, grabs your butt and you're like, yoga, working out every single day. So, but then these women aren't getting physical attention, and yet they're so much focused on the body. So, preparing for a role where you're playing a character like that, what sort of, physical preparation did you do, and kind of like, did you psychoanalyze what's actually going on here?
Well, I mean, I think, unlike Robin, who had to be naked for the film, I think a lot of... I don't think as an actress you need to psychoanalyze it that much. I think as an actress, I and Robin sort of necessarily understand what the feeling of the pressure for a body to look a certain way is. You can't be an actress in this town and not really understand that. And I think it's slightly different than what the housewives in New Jersey experience, but it's not that different. It's really about there being a cultural and social pressure to, look a certain way in your clothes. It's also a desire for control, and I think that's the thing that Robin really keyed into with her character, and with having to do that kind of going through such an extreme regimen to get prepared for the film.
So for Robin, in what ways did Abby help you sort of open your eyes to things in your life, or free yourself from certain things you tried to control?
You mean preconceptions or things I might be trying to control?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a direct answer or not. I feel like Stacie and I were at these opposite places when we were at the moment of making this film together. She was in a very grounded and stable relationship with 2 kids, and decently affluent. Everybody measures affluence by different standards, but certainly affluent, a suburban life. And I was sort of in some ways floating around in the breeze. I guess being an actor is that way somewhat anyway. You're sort of gig to gig and all of that. But in other aspects of my life as well, it was sort of free form, and there was nothing that anchoring at the time. And in the course of working on the film, I feel like she rather sort of opened out to her potential as an artistic presence, as someone who could make films and could have ideas and be creative and bring her intellectual and artistic vision into the world. And I was on some kind of trajectory that I'm sure was influenced by the film that wanted to get a little bit more anchored. And the film so plunged me into that unanchored place. I mean, there were days when I sort of thought, this is an endless road. This is a road that goes nowhere.
But it sort of anchors you.
And really entering that character's experience, I thought, I think the answer is elsewhere. It was odd.
That's interesting. Well, thank you. The film is fantastic. Concussion's out October 4th.